Waiters and waitresses, what's the most horrible experience you have had with a customer? Once, when I was working at this insanely popular breakfast joint, my first table of the morning was a seemingly adorable old couple. After going through our specials, at their request, she ordered the duck hash special. And he ordered 2 boring poached eggs on toast. All good. I bring them their food and the guy starts freaking out. You see, I didn't bring him a tablespoon for his eggs. Granted, he didn't ask for one, but according to him, everyone knows that poached eggs are supposed to be served with a tablespoon. I've been a waitress for nearly a decade, and I've served a lot of poached eggs, and I've never heard this rule. Nonetheless, I apologize profusely and tell him I'll go grab him a spoon. "No!" he yells. "My breakfast is ruined now." And then, this grown-ass adult throws his plate of food at me and storms out. His wife gives me a sympathetic smile as she slinks out behind him, and I work the next 8 hours with egg yolk stains all over me. Story 2. So I never waited tables, but I was a busboy the entire time I was in high school. We had this family that would come in, dude and his wife, their 2 small kids. They seemed like the most ordinary family, but they were like Vishnu, the destroyers of tables. They always left a damn disaster. Fries everywhere, crap all over the floor. I sat and watched as one of the kids put the salt and pepper shakers into a glass of milk, and then watched the dad be like, "Hey, can Junior have a new milk? He had a little accident." They were both submerged in milk. Fries everywhere. Crumbs everywhere. 1% of the food had been consumed. They screamed the entire time to zero reaction from the parents. It was chaos for the entire hour they were there, every time. I had to clean this up probably a dozen times before the hostess asked them not to come back. Yeah, they threw a damn fit. Didn't come back though. Nightmare. Story 3. I had been working at this Thai place in my town for about 8 months, and for the last 4 months, I'd seen the same teenaged couple come in every Sunday and leave 0% regardless of service. One day my boss decided enough was enough. "Tui noi!" she all but yelled to me. That's my Thai nickname. It's an endearing name generally given to chubby children that loosely translates to little something. I don't care whose turn it is. You take them next week, and you make sure you earn that 0%. I do a bit of a double take. She can't possibly mean what I think she means. "You mean?" She nods and gives me this smile that is equal parts devious and smug. A week later, they come in 5 minutes into my shift. She seats them in my section, smiles at me, and tells me to do my worst. Here is a fairly detailed account of the wonderful 45 minutes that followed. I wait a good 5 minutes before going to greet them and bring waters. They're ready to order. "I don't have a pen. I'll be right back," I promise. I go out back, power smoke a cigarette. Takes me about 90 seconds. Before I return, they're my only table and I'm not handling food yet, so I don't wash my hands. I reek of smoke. I take her order. Pad Thai, no beans, sprouts like always. As he opens his mouth to tell me he'll have the same, I give him the just a minute finger and pull out my phone. I text my fiancé and ask if he wants to get dinner from my place or his tonight. I take his order. I somehow misunderstand and write down extra bean sprouts. Their food comes up while I'm telling my boss and the other waitress a story about my cat. I finish telling the story before I get their food. I bring it out and walk away as they're starting to complain about the sprouts. About 5 minutes after they get the food, I get a second table. One is a customer from a former job of mine, and we spend a few minutes catching up when I go to greet them. The 0% try to signal me as I leave the table, but I stare straight ahead. I come back for my new table's order and see that their glasses are missing roughly 4 sips of water. This simply won't do. I hang their ticket and come back to fill their glasses. I look at 0%'s empty glasses, look the guy straight in the eye, smile, and walk away. He stops me as I'm walking over with apps for my new table and asks for boxes. I tell him I'll grab them right after I drop off this food. I play a game of 2048 all the way up to 1024 before bringing them one small box. They ask for 2 bigger boxes and the check. I promise I'll be right back and then ask my boss to keep an eye on the table I like while I go smoke again. Obviously, I don't usually take this many smoke breaks, especially not this early into a shift. I come back and my boss tells me they came to her for boxes and to pay and told her they're never coming back. She voids their check, gives me the 20-some dollars, and tells me I earned it. Story 4. Worst is a big group coming in on a Sunday. Ordered endless chip appetizer, waters all around, asked for extra lemons. You can see where this is going. Stayed for a few hours. Total bill, like $6. Got tipped 50 cents for having to wait around on them for literally my entire shift. Then the whole I am sensitive to gluten spiel that people have. Then they order a beer. I point that beer has gluten in it and they say, "Oh, well, that doesn't bother me. It is just gluten in food that bothers me." Whatever. Like 90% of the gluten-free customers are fine. Just some of those 10% can be extra demanding and sometimes end up eating bread and other things that have gluten in it. It is just the entrees that give them issues. We have an entire gluten-free section on our menu, but some gluten customers want to order off the regular menu and want us to make changes and stuff to accommodate them. It ends up taking about 4 as long as it should and prevents me from being able to serve my other tables. Those are the gluten-free customers I'm having issues with. Story 5. Waitress here. Had a large bruise, size and width of a hand, on my upper forearm, super swollen and purple. Had a guy grab my arm and ask, "Does this hurt?" before squeezing hard. He spent the remainder of his visit making domestic abuse jokes and talking about how he was going to take me home and give me more. Drunk guy with his wife who made jokes about mounting me while the wife just laughed and then tried to rub my arm, sidestepped out the way of that though. Story 6. Not a waitress, but worked in a healthy restaurant. And not most horrible experience, but memorable. There was some sort of convention near my store location. I live in Ottawa, a short hop, skip, and a jump from Quebec. The city is pretty bilingual, but not everyone is. Like me. Anyway, this woman is trying to order, but is speaking French. I can get the gist of things if I hear certain words, but she was speaking rather fast. After a couple minutes of back and forth, trying to answer her questions, I turned to a coworker who is bilingual and asked him to help, as her and I seem to have a language barrier. As I finish my request to said coworker, she says in totally perfect English with probably as much disdain as she could muster, and I quote, "This is Canada. We speak French and English." My mouth dropped, not only because of the comment, but because she understood me the whole time and didn't try to help. I couldn't wrap my mind around why someone would do that. Come on, not everyone is taught French in school. I grew up in the West Coast, prairies where French is not a mandatory subject. All I could do was stare at her for a few seconds and walk away. Story 7. A lady and her husband came in and before sitting down told us that she was deathly allergic to white wine, saying, verbatim, "If you feed me white wine, I will die." So I run around double and triple checking recipes and ingredients, and making sure the kitchen is ready so when she orders, I know her food will be safe. Her husband orders the special, and I make sure to tell her not to eat any of his meal as it is dressed with a beurre blanc made with white wine, and I'd like her to survive her dining experience. Well, I bring out their food, and the first thing she does is scoop a big old forkful of hubby's special, and I cry out in dismay as she shoves in her dumb damn mouth and says while chewing, "Oh, one bite won't hurt." She also single-handedly weeded every server on the floor by forcing them into inane, inappropriate conversations while they were trying to take care of their busy sections, and cornered another guest in the tiny corridor leading to the bathrooms to tell him aggressively he was being too loud. Story 8. This happened a long time ago. I used to work as a busboy, and there was this huge group of about 20 people. At the end of their meal, they received the bill. Everyone put in money for what they ordered. They sat there for a while doing the math and finally figured it out. They call their waitress over and say, "We isn't order no gratuity. Show me gratuity on this table." They continued to try and argue and made the waitress cry. Manager had to be called in to explain what gratuity was. Story 9. I wait tables in a country club. Had a couple come in once, and as they were sitting down, before I had even introduced myself, the woman was already complaining since they had to wait 5 minutes while we reset their table. She started off by telling me every time she gets the filet mignon, it's awful and cooked wrong. I suggested she tried something else. Nope, goes for the same thing again. I gave the kitchen heads up and make sure it was perfect and save us all a headache. Steak comes up, seems fine. I drop her plate in front of her, and I can already see that bullcrap smirk people get when aren't amused. She grabs her butter knife and legit slaps the top of the steak with the flat of it 3 times and goes, "This is disgusting." Hasn't even cut into it or tasted it. Has me take it back and bring her a new one. So, of course we do it. She gets her new one. Eats half of it and takes the rest home. Wants to talk to a manager. Guides up a storm, gets her whole meal free and dessert. Leave me a Garbo tip, even if you don't include the free steak and dessert. Even left me a comment card, just saying, "Steak sucked," and 1 star for service. Story 10. Had a tray balanced on my shoulder full of food, and I was setting down hot plates to the table. Grandma shook her half-empty glass of tea in my face and asked why she couldn't get any service. Story 11. A family of 6 dined and dashed on Thanksgiving. It was already a rough thing to be working a family holiday knowing my tribe was at home enjoying themselves. But to have to miss out on what should have been a good tip, it was just salt in the wound. At the end of the night, I just cried. All of the servers rallied around me and tried to offer me a portion of their tips to make up for a loss. I couldn't accept it, so they got me drunk and drove me home instead. They are awesome people. Story 12. I was new to the job and still finding my feet when I had a guy who was insistent that I wasn't capable of the job due to my dwarfism and kept complaining about inclusive bollocks. What I found frustrating about the whole situation is that I'm not a good waiter, but due to reasons completely unrelated to my dwarfism, poor memory, anxiety, coordination, etc., and he was doubting my competence before I had shown any of these issues. It was purely based on how I looked, but I never felt like I was able to prove him wrong either. That experience really got to me for a long time. Story 13. Worked as a barback. I accidentally dropped a fork on a very drunk dude's foot who got angry and shook his head and grumbled about it. Shocking, I know. Bits of food fell on the ground as well, so I grabbed a towel to clean it up. I looked the man in the eye to let him know I'm on the floor, cleaning next to him. He then proceeds to stand up and step on my hand as he walks to the bathroom. It really hurt, and I yelled out in pain. He didn't acknowledge it at all, but chuckled as he walked away. Sadly, there wasn't much I could do. I just got angry and walked to the back to calm down. Story 14. An elderly man came right beside me when I was at a table and dried his hands on my arm because there weren't paper towels in the washroom. Management did not kick him out. Story 15. Had a group of girls speak to my manager and call me a stupid idiot over 13 cents. Basically, they ordered a side of fries and one maybe got a lemonade. Anyway, give them their bill and they gave me. Just enough to cover it since we round to the nearest dollar instead of dealing with coins. Girls flip out over 13 cents, so I go in my bag to scrounge it up. They speak to my manager who refunded them everything. Stupid. And they proceed to call me names as they leave their table. I was having a bad day, so it made me upset at the time. Now I find the whole thing laughable. Story 16. Guy tries to get my attention, so instead of saying, "Excuse me, miss," he intentionally grabbed my arise and then apologized with, "Oh, sorry, I was going for your hip. I know I've got a booty, okay? It's not hard to miss." He got kicked out after that, as it wasn't the first time he's done it to other servers in our restaurant. Story 17. I'm gonna mix things up and tell you all about a time that I was the idiot when I was a server. These 3 black women came into the restaurant with their 4 little kids, and I led them to their table, welcomed them, yada yada. By the time I was asking what they wanted to drink, the kids were already bored and had started climbing on the tables and chairs. I honestly thought it was cute, so I said without thinking, "You have a little family of monkeys." Immediately, I realized my mistake. My eyes widened in horror as theirs widened in surprise. I hoped they would ignore it. But one of the women turned to the 2 and loudly asked, "Did this idiot really just—" And I ran away. I served them their food and spent an entire hour avoiding eye contact, as I didn't know what I could say that wouldn't make things worse. When they left and I went to collect the bill, one of the women actually left me a really good tip and a note that just said, "It's okay," with a smiley face. I hope her life is full of sunshine and happiness and goodness. Story 18. My worst, most awkward experience came from my favorite regular. When I was waiting tables, I had this black cowboy who used to come in every Sunday after church. For brunch, usually with his wife, but sometimes alone. We would talk about horses, rodeoing, life, and when he was alone, women. One Sunday, I didn't see him, and he didn't come in for 2 more weeks after that. On the 4th week, I see him again, and took him from the hostess, and sat him myself at an open table in my section. After I get his extra sweet tea and coffee set for him, I asked where he had been, and told him he better have a vacation to tell me about. He dropped his eyes and softly mumbled that his wife had passed. My heart dropped and didn't know what to say. My manager, who knew him, let me and another waiter he liked get off early and sit with him for his meal. He didn't talk much, but I could tell he appreciated just having someone sit with him. Seeing the pain that he felt really put a lot into perspective for me and made me appreciate my own relationship so much more. I lost contact with him after I moved away to start my career, but I really wish I could find him and talk to him again and let him know what an impact he had on my life. Story 19. Not a waitress, but previously a lady bartender at a theater. On an incredibly busy night where we are well understaffed, an old guy ordered a Jack Daniels, then proceeded to blank my next 3 questions of, "Would you like ice with that?" Whilst chatting with his mates, other customers are desperately clamoring for my attention. After some thought, I put the ice in, as it's the more popular option. He then turns back, looks at his drink, cold and disgusted says, "What the hell is this?" "I don't want ice," flustered. I fix his drink, apologizing profusely. He still continues to look at me like dirt, pays scoffs, and walks off. It sounds like a little thing, I know, but I was only 18 and was so shook up by it. Story 20. I used to work at Subway. There was one legendary customer that we only refer to as Crazy Bacon Lady. She was an older woman. She came in and asked how much a 6 inches bacon was. We told her it was $3.50 plus tax. She then proceeded to yell at us, saying it was $2 when she came in yesterday. Hint, she didn't come in yesterday. In fact, this was the first time she had even been in our store. Plus the fact that the bacon was never at any point $2 in the 3 years I had worked there. She barks out her order the whole way up the line, saying such gems as, "I am a good Christian woman. I don't deserve to be treated this way. For $3.50, that bacon better be fresh. The service here is terrible. I'm never coming back, you hear me?" And the best one of them all, when she gets to my coworker who is manning the cash register and he tells her the total of $3.68, tax and all, she says, "You people are workers of the devil." She plops down exact change, snatches up her bag, and storms out the door. Whenever I see my old coworkers, we still have a good laugh about it. Story 21. Served at Olive Garden for 2 years. Typical busy night. Never-ending pasta bowl time of year. Yay. It was one of my first tables of the evening. Family of 5, mom, dad, 2 sons, and a little girl, probably 2 or 3. They were all exceedingly overweight, and the daughter had on a dirty shirt and no pants. just a diaper. While on a check back, I noticed an overwhelming scent of crap lingering around the table. I don't judge. I have no idea what's going on in their life. I just tell myself someone probably farted, and I just walked up at the exact wrong moment. Well, I returned with some refills. Crap smell still just as intense as before, and on my way around the table to pass out beverages. I pass the high chair. I notice the little girl has her hand in her diaper. What the heck? I then proceed to watch her pull out a turd and throw it on the floor to join an even larger turd that was already there, slightly covered by a napkin. I could not hide the disgust on my face. I don't remember exactly the words I used, but I turned to the parents and said, your daughter has a situation going on over here. The mother replies, yeah, I know I threw that over it. Then continues to devour her third refill on never-ending pasta. I was in disbelief. Not only is there 2 pieces of fresh Honey Boo-style crap on the floor, but the girl's hands are obviously covered in crap, and not one family member seems to care in the slightest. One of the brothers even asked me for another Dr. Pepper while I was standing there still in shock. So I immediately told the manager on duty and she didn't believe me. I said, I crap you not, Amanda. Go see for yourself. She ended up politely asking the mother to clean it up immediately. She even gave her disinfectant wipes. The mom became irate and claimed it's not her job, blah, blah, blah. She feels discriminated that we would ask her to do such a thing. And she demanded everything be paid for. She ended up picking up the crap. She picked it up, but she didn't wash her hands, didn't clean up her daughter, continued to finish her meal. I thought it was over and they'd pay and get the duck out to never return. But no, as I'm dropping the check, Mom says, it's my son's birthday. Don't y'all sing and give us dessert? Story 22. The worst issue I ever had was technically with a chef. Not a customer, but I'll tell the customer story. It happened at a Waffle House I worked at for just a few weeks when I was about 21 years old. I had moved to a big city to pursue my pro wrestling dreams. Spoiler alert, I'm a secretary now. And needed something to pay the bills, and waitressing seemed easy enough. It wasn't too bad until one evening when I was working a shift that was something like 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. around midnight or 1, the drunks come in. Usually fairly inoffensive, if hard to explain how to order a hash brown. Pro tip, drunks almost always want ham. This one dude, though, he came in not just drunk, but possibly high off his tits on something. He was singing what I think was rap, by way of sea shanty. His shirt was unbuttoned except for one button over his chest. That was in a hole 3 spots too high for it, and he had one shoe. There were a few reasons our chef pretty immediately declared that he needed to get out. Said customer decided to explain his disagreement with the chef's decision by somehow climbing his way onto the bar, standing right in front of me at the dishwashing sink, and immediately dropping his pants to show he was missing underwear as well. I admit, I panicked a little, grabbed the nearest available thing, and proceeded to shoot the man in the junk with the hot water hose we used on the dishes. Anyone who's worked in a kitchen can probably attest to just how hot the water coming out of those hoses is. The man doubled over, screaming and grabbing at his junk, toppled over backwards off the bar, hitting us on one of the chairs on the way, and literally rolled across the floor towards the door, maintaining his fetal position the entire way. Afterwards, we called the police. They came and got him, took statements, laughed for perhaps an unkind length of time, and took him to the hospital in some months. Later, I found out he had plea bargained to a couple hundred hours community service for public intoxication and disturbing the peace or something like that. Story 23. As a bartender once, I experienced what it is like for girls to be creeped on, and now I have a whole new understanding of what it is like. The guy who owned a gay bar in Leeds, one town over, was talking to me. My bar was empty, and he was a small, older gentleman who wouldn't stop saying how I'd be great there and that he would pay way more money. Also that at 11, everyone takes their tops off, and at 12, their trousers too. But only if you want to. I was polite and all that, but it was creepy. When it came time for him to leave, he went to shake my hand, but then pulled it over and gave it the sloppiest kiss I could imagine. Ladies, I'm so sorry for men. I felt actually abused and washed my hand for a good 10 minutes. Story 24. I did a stint at Starbucks. They put into the Target I was working at, had just graduated from my degree program, and they offered to let me manage it. It was good money. Of special note, the just graduated bit. Graduated from college, as had the person I was working with. We made this woman's iced tea wrong. I don't remember why. It was a stupid mistake, but those happen. It would have taken all of 30 seconds to remake it. She threw it back across the counter, literally threw it, turned to her daughter and said in the most preppy, idiot, never worked a day in her life soccer mom, trophy wife voice. See, this is why we finish high school. Being the manager, I refused her any further service. She thought she'd be by the short hairs when she went to get the Target store manager. But when a ton of other customers backed up my story, she was removed from Target. Story 25. A group of 10 came in for a birthday ton, have drinks, and sing karaoke. I start going around the table asking what each person would like, and I get to Princess. She asks me for a drink menu. I tell her I have a beer list, but not a cocktail menu. It's a dive bar. She asks about pineapple drinks. I I tell her we could do rum and pineapple, a pineapple upside-down drink, etc. So she's asking her friend, no, that's not it. What did I have that one time that I loved? So 2 more tables sit while I'm trying to take her order. So I'm just trying to speed it along. I tell her we make pineapple margaritas unblended. She just kept asking, well, what other things with pineapple? So I tell her, you can pretty much make your own drink. What kind of liquor do you want? She took that as me saying to go back and make her own drink. So I backtrack and say, what I mean is we can start with a liquor and add pineapple and whatever other fruit or liquids you want. She finally just gets a pineapple upside-down drink. So the night goes by. Everyone in her group is super chill. We're having a great time. And she's just got daggers on me the entire time. They finally cash out. I give her bill, which is $5 because of weird tax. It's cash only. I ask if anyone needs change. Everyone says they're good and leaves. I go look at her ticket and she left me a $5 bill. Nothing else. Normally, I wouldn't even print checks and just say $5. I don't know why after 12 years of serving and bartending this sticks out to me. Anyway, F you princess and your dumb pineapple drinks. No wonder you were the only single one at the table. You owe me a penny. Story 26. Not a waiter, but went out with the ex and her family for her birthday dinner to an Ethiopian restaurant. Her mom is the queen of passive-aggressive and grilled the waitress for about half an hour. Nothing outright mean, but like I said, mistress of passive-aggressive. At one point, the waitress starts screaming, throws her notepad at us, and quits on the spot. She ended up coming back, but wouldn't talk to the ex's mom. We all left her an extra $20 stip each. Story 27. 12 years in the industry. Worked front and back of the house throughout. Definitely more good times than bad. Always tried to diffuse situations before they escalated out of control, but a few moments stand out. The best moment was some dad giving me crap about misquoting the price of the lunch special, $1 less, in front of his family. Pulled a buck out of my pocket and dropped it on the table and walked off. Almost got beat by another prep cook when he thought the food wasn't coming out fast enough. Walked off that job. Executive chef offers me another 25 cents an hour to come back. No thanks. Life is worth more than that. Story 28. When I was working at Rita's, a water ice stand, I had a lady come to the window with her 2 children. First off, she had on booty shorts with her ass checks hanging out and a corset-type top that was 10 sizes too small. It just barely covered her boobs. And did I mention she had her 2 young children with her? Well, anyways, it's busy and the line is long and she comes up. I take the order for her daughter and then her son says he has to pee. She then takes her son to the side of our building. We have windows on the side so we get a full view of the front, and has him pee there when there was a huge tree about a few feet away, and we had a bathroom that we allow kids use. Well, anyway, she's taking long, and with the line wrapping around the building, I take the next customer while she lets her son piss up our building. She then comes back and steps in front of the lady and says she's ready. I asked her to give me a minute since I was almost finished with the customer that she just stepped in front of. She then goes on to yell really loud how unprofessional I was and how I had terrible customer service. I then explained to her that while she had her son pee on the side of the building, I decided to try and get the next person out of the way. She then goes to deny her son peeing on the side of the building and says she would like to speak to my manager. My manager doesn't believe in the customer is always right crap and hated people like this. So I gave her his number and wrote down my name for her to tell him, which pissed her off even more. She did wait to get her stuff though, screaming the whole time I'm making it, then huffs off. The people behind her each apologized for the way she acted and all told me I was doing a great job and gave me tips. And there's also that we had to call the cops on because he would wait until we closed and try and get us to come to his house to clean. Yep, I don't work there anymore. Story 29. We had a horrible experience with every other customer because of one customer. The dude was a regular, came in at least 4 times a week, and every time would camp in his booth for a solid 3 hours. You know the type. One Friday night, during dinner rush, this guy comes in with a large duffel bag. Not too uncommon. He always brought weird stuff to work on. This time, it was a partially assembled R15 kit, which he pulled out, set on the table, and proceeded to continue assembling the kit. Cue mass complaints, alarm from other customers while we huddle in the back, deciding how to best kick him out without causing even more of a scene. Story 30. Being in the industry for over 15 years, you see a lot. I've been threatened by a woman who was going to get her knife and duck me up. I have had people grab my package, men and women. I've been at a location where some kids shot out our window with a pellet gun, and my staff and customers thought we were under attack from terrorists. My favorite of all time is in a steakhouse where a guy was leaving, and as he left, scooped at least 50 mints in his arms. My host at the time was a smart-ass 20-year-old who had a good sense of humor. As the customer is leaving, he says, "Enjoy the mints." This infuriated the guy, and he starts yelling and cussing. I'm managing and start to hear this from the front of the restaurant that night, and as I'm walking up there, I see a guy, dressed business casual, holding a crap load of mints in arms 2 feet away, yelling at this kid, and my host just has a huge smile saying, "No, I'm not apologizing. I calmly ask if I can help the gentleman out, while being completely lost as to what the hell is going on. And he yells he wants me to make the host apologize. I ask him to please calm down and let me talk to the host to see what happened. Host tells me, I told him enjoy the mints, with the biggest smile he could manage. I then turn to this guy, his face red, now shaking, he's so mad. Mints falling out of his arms, and I just couldn't take it. I'm trying so hard not to laugh in his face, and all I could manage was, sir, please enjoy your mints. Needless to say, he leaves in a hissy fit, calls corporate, and then I get to explain it to my boss. Write-ups, which are complete garbage, are handed out, and we had to give this guy and his wife a free meal. Story 31. Worked at a very popular chain wing place, you all know it. 24 top to myself, with other tables in my section, all separate checks, all mostly cash, which needed change, and all trying to pay at the same time. During this frantic moment of me hustling to make change and swipe cards, I have at least 4 of these mother duckers trying to sneak out the front door. I saw them, slammed down everything in my hands and chased them all the way to their cars. I confronted one of the girls as she rolled her window up while yelling, "Damn you idiot," and peeling out of the parking lot. Forget the rest of them, I went back in. Mind you, no support from fellow staff here. I get back into the rest of the people impatiently waiting for me, and some of them trying to tell me they already paid me when I know they didn't. I was so angry that night, I vowed to never put myself through that for so little again, so I quit. I love my job now. Story 32. So begins the saga of the silverware lady. I work in a restaurant where the front has the bar and TVS, and the back is big open seating and a nice view. I was working the front, so naturally I get a lot of the people who like to watch sports and get drinks. My whole section is pretty dirty as we just got done with a rush. We don't have bussers, so I'm doing my best to clean it up and serve at the same time. One lady walks in and without saying anything else, instantly goes, "I want to watch ESPN, the ladies' soccer game is on." I assure her that we can get that channel on the TV, and I clear a spot for her. As I'm wiping the table, she scowls at me and says, I need the TV on ESPN. I finish wiping the table, mildly annoyed, and talk to the bartender, who is in control of changing the channel. He is extremely busy making drinks and tells me to go make sure the other guests won't mind. I make a round. The lady grabs me and says, "The channel still isn't on ESPN." I apologize and tell her I just need to make sure no one is watching or cares if I change the channel. She huffs and groans and goes, "Well, just get it changed." No one was opposed to me changing the channel. So I asked the bartender again to change it. He says he will when he is done making the drinks. He literally has 20 tickets in front of him. I go back to the table and ask the lady if she would like anything to drink. She says ESPN. I just walk away at this point and beg the bartender to change the channel. I would do it myself, but the system is ridiculously complicated. I tell him I cannot walk back to the table until he changes the channel because the lady is insane. He huffs away and gets it changed. I felt bad, but this lady was insane. So now that the channel is changed, I go back over to her and ask what she would like to drink. She tells me and I put in the order and get it for her. When I come back, I ask her what she would like for food. She looks down at the table and says, "I need silverware." I'm a little confused, but I just say, "Okay," and that I will bring some, and then ask her again what she would like to eat. She looked me straight in the face and said, "Silverware." I try to make light of how unbelievable frustrated and pissed off I am at this woman and laugh and joke. "Okay, 1 silverware for dinner, got it," and pretend to write on my notepad. She's completely unamused and just says silverware again. She repeats it over and over like 5 times. Just saying silverware. I just walk away again to go get it because this is obviously going to be another ESPN. The silverware station I went to is empty. Lovely. I had to walk past her to get to the other station. As I was walking by her, she stopped me and said, "You guessed it. I need silverware." I ignored her, fuming at this point, and grabbed the damn silver setup. I put it in front of her and asked her what she wanted to eat. She then happily told me her order and was pleasant the rest of the meal. She ended up tipping well also. She was completely normal once she got ESPN and her silverware. Now, whenever I tell my friends about a bad customer, they like to smirk at me and say silverware in a matter-of-fact, "Are you an idiot?" voice. It was one of the most infuriating and weird things I have dealt with as a server. Story 33. Situation. Busy dinner shift. 6 top table sits at my large booth. 2 white middle-aged couples and older white couple. At the beginning of service, I noticed they were very inquisitive, to say the least. This does not bother me, as I like answering any and all questions regarding the menu. I feel as if this is a main part of my overall job as your server. Anyways, they all ordered their meals, received them in a timely fashion, and had no initial complaints. I stayed on top of their refills and condiment requests, seeing as they were a bit needier than your average table. Again, no qualms for me here, as this is the basic function of the job, and I do this every time for every table. Now for the fun part. Time to pay the bill. Lady in the middle tells me it will be 3 separate checks and hands me one of our buy 1 entree, get 1 entree 50% off coupons. She said that it will apply to all 3 checks. Confused, I informed her that she must have 2 more coupons if she wished to receive the discount on the other 2 checks. She then says that the coupon says 1 per check at the bottom and that I'm mistaking and she would like to speak to a manager. I said okay and went to inform our manager of the situation. Manager arrives at the table and proceeds to tell her the exact same thing I said. She does not look happy. The old man at the table then blurts out that he is a veteran and did not receive his military discount. Well, our restaurant doesn't offer these kinds of discount, but eager to get them out. My manager gives him a 10% discount on his bill. Now he's mad that the discount was not applied to the entire table and says, I go to Waffle House and get 15% off my whole bill. Side note, we are a lot fancier than a Waffle House. At this point, they are standing up in the middle of the dining room, being loud and obnoxious at both me and my manager, and causing a scene in front of other patrons and employees. Then this lady, oh, this stupid, ignorant, damn lady comes up right to my face, puffs her chest out and says, "What are you, some kind of idiot?" All while pointing her finger an inch from my face. "There's no discount on my bill at all now," she yells, which there was a discount on the bill. But at this point, they were more concerned with making a scene, even if they are obviously mistaken. To avoid the stream of obscenities that was itching to escape from my mouth, I instantly turned around and walked away to de-escalate the already deteriorated situation. I get to the back and am visually upset. My general manager was standing on Expo and saw I was upset and got loud with me telling me to calm down. Bad damn timing. I tossed my drink tray and walked out the back door because I swear I was being tested. After my other manager explained the situation to the GM as well as the actions of the hellish table, nothing ever came of the confrontation. After everything was said and done, the manager hands me their credit slip after they paid the bill. Stiffed on $120. Sorry for the long post, but I swear some people truly and honestly damn suck. Story 34. I worked midnights at a college town Denny's for over a year, and for the most part, it was one of the better experiences of my life. There were some interesting moments, to be sure. I was usually the only male on staff, which meant that I would volunteer to serve any of the more slimy or grope-tastic customers. Somebody was going to get a crappy tip either way. I figured no one deserved to have their night ruined as well, at least on my watch. At the time, one of our more notorious customers was an old guy named Ollie. You could tell that Ollie's was a sad tale. You could also tell it was entirely his fault. He was like if Santa Claus had a charming brother, and some terrible beast had chewed him up and digested all of the charisma, leaving a bitter, unlikable shell that yet thought it was entertaining. He wore the same crafty red t-shirt and a baseball cap that had the eyes of the Tasmanian devil emblazoned on the front, to perhaps hypnotize the terribly drunk like some horrible white trash cobra. He often talked about how his wife hit him with a bat. When I first met him, I was sympathetic. The ladies simply asked if I would cover him. He just needed coffee refills. No one shared anything about him besides the fact that he was a coffee-sipping lunk. And with that off-white soup-stained beard, I didn't expect a tip going in. All night, he kept putting a lit cigarette on the bar, standing on its butt. You could smoke in Denny's at the time, and telling female passers-by that he is racket ship was a butt to blast off. There was a period in which he had a single razor-wide strip of his beard shaved off of his left cheek. No one wanted to know why. As the months went on, I became aware that he had been grab-assigned the ladies. Or worse. I caught him blocking someone in the bathroom once. Not physically barring the door, but being too damned creepy and getting too damned close. It wasn't immediately obvious, mind you. He backed off when I got there, and the look on the lady's face as she escaped the bathroom told me the rest of the story. Had she fessed up about what happened, I would have booted that creepy duck immediately, but she left as soon as she could, and I don't blame her. Then came the fateful night where he ordered food. I knew he didn't have the money to order from us. He's never ordered from us. Had he not been a creepy git, I would have just paid for his meal and called it a reverse tip. But this was all I needed. He finished his meal, I delivered the bill, and he told me he couldn't pay. I made sure to say it loud enough for all the ladies of Denny's to hear. "All right, Ollie, get out, and you can't come back." He shuffled out, and they all swarmed over to learn what had happened. It was true, Ollie was 86. None of the ladies could ever prove that he grabbed them, but we could conclusively prove that I was stiffed. They cheered as one voice. It was almost as glorious as when he tried to come back the next night. The lady who had endured his hands more than any other was working that evening and came to me doe-eyed to thank me personally. When Ollie inevitably lumbered up to the door, she ran to intercept at full speed and held it shut with all of her might, screaming at him that he could never come back. One of the happy endings I was able to supply in my life. I'll never forget it. There's plenty more where that came from, if anyone is interested. Story 35. When I was a barista, we got a bomb threat. That sucked. The worst part was telling regulars that they had to leave the building because we're evacuating, offering them a free drink coupon for their trouble, and some of them refused to leave. I eventually let them know that the police were on their way to deal with an emergency, and they had better leave if they didn't want to deal with police. The other bad one was the slow burn of harassment from some older dudes who came in every day. We had to put up with so much crap because it was our job. If they crossed a line, we could put our foot down. But the day-to-day leering and sexual innuendo really wore some of us down. For a week or two, we had to wear different colors of t-shirts to promote a new drink. There were 3 of us girls wearing 3 different colors. We also happened to each be different races. The guys laughed and said, "I'll have one of each." Ugh, there's so much crap service people have to put up with as part of their job. Story 36. When I was waiting at a restaurant, I approached this table where 2 men were sitting to refill their water. Before I even finished saying hello, one of them looks at me with a blank expression and says, "Get a haircut and a real job," and then immediately goes back to his conversation with his friend. It doesn't sound that bad written out, but at the time, it was simply incredibly rude. Story 37. Not me, but a fellow coworker. He was waiting on an elderly gentleman and his daughter for her birthday dinner. Everything was fine up until said server dropped the check off. The daughter insisted on paying, so the server gave the checkbook to her. Wrong move. The father yelled, "What the heck you think you're doing, kid? You made the biggest mistake of your damn life. You'll damn regret that." Now, since they were a cool table up until that point, the server thought he was joking and let out a little chuckle. Big mistake. The guy went off even more and finally said, "You're lucky I'm not younger. I would kick your damn ass." The daughter was so embarrassed, she tipped the guy $50 on a $100 tab. I wouldn't believe this story if I didn't hear it myself. Story 38. I am a waiter and have some stories. On one particular night, we were closing up, and the tables were empty except for the bar. I was sitting at the end of the bar resting my legs. The manager, bartender, good friend, was behind the bar. This gay guy was sitting 2 seats away from me with an old British lady, and 2 Dominican cooks were sitting at the other end, speaking Spanish. The gay guy and the old British lady, especially, were belligerent drunk. The British lady starts yelling at the Dominican cooks, who I'm tight with, saying, "This is not your country, go back to wherever you belong, Colombia, Spain, whatever, and you guys are useless, blah, blah, blah." I don't tolerate prejudice, and I was having issues with my girlfriend at the time, so naturally, I got livid. So I got into her face and started yelling at her, "Damn you, who damn are you to say that you are better than another person? You're an immigrant yourself, hypocrite, damn you." Then she started mumbling gibberish back at me, and I said, "Get the duck out of here and never come back, damn idiot." Now she is banned, and I am an honorary Dominican according to my coworkers. Story 39. Waitress at a gas station restaurant here. If you have traveled the interstate through Nebraska and stop at travel centers, you have most definitely seen me. I had a trucker get upset because his rice pilaf wasn't made with white rice. Granted, it doesn't look delicious, it isn't bad. He yelled at me, my coworker, and the cook and caused a huge scene in front of a full house. He screamed at my coworker the most because she's an idiot and wouldn't put up with his crybaby crap. He took 2 bowls of rice and got upset with both of them. This could have easily been solved with a new side. He wanted to yell at the cook about serving food that does not look good while we were busy with other customers. I just ignored him the rest of the night. I let him pout and glare. He only got mildly upset with me. But I am young while everyone else working has kids my age, and he wanted to yell at them and not me, thankfully. I usually don't deal with the B's. We discounted him and he did end up leaving me a tip. I was embarrassed to be this grown man's waitress. Another time, my spineless manager gave 3 men free porterhouse steaks because they came in last week and they ordered 3 T-bones to go and they were wrong. He had not proof of purchase, no pictures of the mistake, didn't call after buying. He didn't know if it happened at this exact location. He was obviously lying. They ended up getting 3 $22 steaks free along with refusing to pay for drinks and their additional sides because they didn't know it would cost. I didn't get a tip out of the ordeal either. Tip your waitresses, good guys. This job sucks. Story 40. This one is more of a sad story, but one of the common and horrible parts of working in a restaurant. I worked at a very popular seafood place in a resort town. A family comes in one night, and they are clearly on vacation. It's a dad, mom, and 2 young boys, probably both around 7 years old. I get a weird vibe from these people, like a white trash vibe, so immediately I was thinking, oh crap, well, I'm not getting tipped on this table. I go to the table and greet them, and offer them one of our featured drinks that night. The mom immediately says yes to the special drink, and the dad interrupts her and quietly whispers something. I didn't think anything of it. I return a couple of minutes later with the drink order and suddenly realize that this lady is absolutely trashed. I quickly went back and got her a dummy drink. As the dinner goes on, I notice that the lady has a flask as well, and start noticing that her husband is subtly begging her to stop drinking. The kids start to notice that something is up and are clearly very upset, not saying a word, just sitting in silence, looking down. The kids are drawing pictures on their placemats showing their mom, and she's just barely remaining consciousness. As the woman keeps getting worse, the husband asks for all of their food to go. I wrapped everything up. They paid their check, and as they were walking out, the woman ended up getting lost and going into the kitchen and lit up a cigarette. The husband had been walking ahead of her with the kids, so he thought she was still following him to the exit. I had to go and get him and tell him in front of his kids that his wife was smoking a cigarette in the kitchen and that he had to go and get her out. The kids immediately started crying, and the one young boy said, "Why does she do this, Daddy?" I wanted to die. I felt so bad for this man and his kids. He was able to get his wife to leave the kitchen, and she finally exited the restaurant. He apologized profusely to me, and I honestly just wanted to hug the guy. The kids were obviously exposed to this before, and it really broke my heart. There was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Anyway, I looked back at the credit card slip that the guy left, and it was a giant tip. Just another lesson to never prejudge people, because you never know what they're going through. Story 41. I'm a relatively new server at Applebee's, started in January, and about a month ago had a particularly horrible experience. It was a Friday night just after happy hour had started, 9 p.m., so it was booming. Anyway, I had one table come in, father and daughter, and it turned into a crap show real quick. I got their drinks and brought them to the table and began to take their orders. The father ordered our Southwest steak salad, only comes medium rare for whatever reason and is clearly stated on the menu. And the daughter ordered the same thing. The daughter, however, asked if she could get the steak medium well. I informed her that it was the restaurant's policy that it only come medium rare, but that I would go talk to my manager to see if I could make it happen. She said, "No, that's all right. I'm good with Mr." Her father then told her to shut up and began to ream me on how all of our food is pre-cooked, and that it's ridiculous that we couldn't up-temp the steak on that salad. I took it like a champ, apologized, and let him know that. I would speak with a manager right away and make sure we got the steak done medium well. I left, spoke with the manager who gave me the okay to get that steak cooked medium well. And when I came back to the table to deliver the good news, the father was face-to-face with a gentleman, a regular, from the table I was serving directly behind them, and they looked like they were going to come to blows. I ran over and tried to defuse the situation, as it was not something we wanted happening right in the middle of the busy restaurant. Apparently, the gentleman who is a regular overheard how the father was speaking to his daughter and I, and told him he needed to treat the two of us better and with more respect. The father then got upset at this statement, fired something back at him, and the two stood up to exchange words and undoubtedly fists. The situation began to escalate quickly, as I tried to offer to move them tables and whatnot and let them know that we couldn't have them acting this way in the restaurant. Nothing worked. I ran to grab my manager, and when we returned, the two were brawling on the floor. We broke them up, had to kick them both out, and I then had to finish the last 3 hours of my closing shift feeling very rattled and a bit out of it. I know that it all could have been avoided if I just told them, "Sure, I'll get right on that," after the order, but I wanted to make sure that we could in fact up-temp the steak before. I put the order in as it is a hassle to change it and go back to the table to inform them we can't cook the meal how they would like, and that they would either have to eat it as is or they would need to reorder. Story 42. I know it isn't much, but probably the dumbest customer I have helped. Worked at Dairy Queen and on a day when it was 90 degrees outside. A woman came in and ordered a cone. I hand it to her and she goes outside to eat it. About 10 minutes later, she comes inside with a half-eaten cone and tells us to remake it because it was melting. Story 43. Abusive dude out on a date with his meek lady, brought them their food, drinks, no worries, but there was an obvious hostile vibe going on in between him and her, halfway through the meal. I come back and ask if everything is going okay, and she looks like she's about to burst into tears, but no, everything is great, very rudely and kind getful of here vibe strongly radiating from the dude. I come back at the end of the meal to ask about drinks, dessert, and he is red-faced pissed that I had the nerve to come up to the table again. He says, "Bring me the check now, and if you disturb us anymore, I'm going to use this knife on you." And he holds up his steak knife with his right hand and points it at me. I remember looking at her kind of half laughing, going like, "Is this guy damn serious?" But her head was sunken down and she would not meet my eyes. I brought them their check and they left without incident. That was many years ago, and I am still upset when I think about that night. I didn't do anything to confront him, which I thought would only have made things worse for her. In my mind, I like to replay things with alternate action hero endings. Like I introduce his face to his plate and the cops come and arrest him and she's saved and everything ends up happy. But I think now in hindsight that there's probably a lot of hostility and conflict between couples that never sees the light of day. I just happened to have a front row seat that night to watching one of the biggest pieces of crap eat a meal with his companion. It still makes me sad and angry. Story 44. I work in a fairly nice bar at a hostel, so there's been lots of different types of people coming and going. The worst I can come up with right now was this British guy, of course, traveling alone who sits at the bar and starts a conversation with two other travelers. He seemed like a pretty funny guy, so all was in good fun. I opened up a tab for him and he proceeded to buy the three of them drinks all night and eventually tequila shots. This started going downhill pretty quickly, since I could just see him getting more crap-faced by the minute. This guy ends up yelling at the people he was talking to, telling them they're not drinking enough, eats chips and has half of them fall out of his mouth. On the floor I had to clean, since he was shouting at the same time, and ends up breaking at least 4 glasses that weren't his, including one of our nicer wine glasses. That's when I start to get really pissed after I've warned him already a couple of times. He goes to his room and apparently passed out for half an hour. Mind you, I still had his credit card and an open tab. When he comes back, he clearly forgot to put his underwear under his pants, because he's displaying his ass to everyone seated while he leans over the bar, asking me in broken words for another beer. I give him a glass of water and tell him to go back to bed, to which he proceeds to get pissed off at me and demanding another beer, and that he's already paid so much that night, to which I get reminded he hasn't even paid yet. I swipe his card with the total amount, almost €100, and hand him the machine to put his PIN in, because I was already very pissed off at this point and just wanted to get rid of him. I didn't realize the payment didn't go through, which I only found out through my manager the next day. Luckily, since we're a hostel, we had his details and charged it directly to him. Oh, and I also found out from one of the guys he was buying drinks all night for, who was also sleeping in the same room, that he ended up peeing on this poor guy's bed. Seriously, damn that guy. Story 45. Best one was a dude that made me go back and forth to the kitchen because his meal wasn't the way he wanted it. Overcooked, then not cooked enough, then, oh, I'm celiac. Please make sure there isn't gluten in it. He still ate a not gluten-free cake, etc. He also tried to steal the bottle of wine from the neighbor table, saying, "The waiter told me that this bottle was for us," made crafty comment about one of the waitress, spoke way too loud about uninteresting fact involving a rude vocabulary. In short, he was putting water into everyone boiling oil. Don't do that. At the end of the nightmare, he asked for compensation because of the way we treated him and started to throw and fit at my mother. That was my parents' restaurant, because she said no. He kept arguing and yelled, "Customer is king." In English, it's, "The customer is always right, if I isn't mistaken." What he didn't know is that this sentence is a direct way to summon my father, the cook, from his kitchen. So my father just came out with a big-ass knife and told, "Here in France, we got history with kings, and I'm going to respect my ancestors. Who wants to get beaten?" Piece of trash shut the hell up, paid his crap, and went away. All that BS for a €15 meal, starter, main course, apple pie, coffee. Story 46. I work at a winery where we get the occasional limo full of drunk people. We do not allow them in because we are not a bar and do not serve drunk people. Occasionally, the manager is away from the door. That's me. And that's when they will attempt to sneak in. I had to approach one of them and tell them politely that their party had too much to drink and had to leave. And she said, "I'm not going anywhere." I assured her that my staff would not serve her, so it was pointless to insist on staying. I said if she didn't leave within 5 minutes, she would be escorted by a police officer, and she said, "Bull crap. You're not going to do crap." So I called the local cop we have on call right in front of her and said, "He is on his way. I suggest you leave if you want to save yourself the embarrassment." She proceeded to follow me into the back office. I was going out the side door to get the limo plate, and she pushes me into a filing cabinet and says, "We aren't leaving, idiot." Then her group came back, grabbed her, and they sped off in their limo. The cop arrived a minute later, and I gave him the plate number to go give them a little scare. All this for a glass of wine. Happens at least 3 times a year. Story 47. I used to work at a restaurant that was inside a hockey arena. It was a cool place, and the people who worked there were fantastic. However, the arena was home to a now defect old hockey team. On the surface, it was pretty cool because one of the banquet rooms overlooked the ice. So when it was slow during games, staff could check out some of the action and see a few guys who made it to the NHL. But the players were damn awful when they would come in after the games. Most of them were 20 at the time. They never had any money, and they acted like they owned the place. One night, after a game, a player, best kid on the team, blue chip, top 5 NHL prospect, comes in, orders a pizza, eats, gets the bill, waits until I'm out of sight, leaves the book on the table, and leaves. When I approach the table, I assume he's left cash. Nope. Little left me 5 promotional hockey cards that the team gave out that night, and one of them was the damn mascot. I go tell the manager, and he says that I'm going to have to cover the $12 for the pizza. I, a 24-year-old waiter, am irate at having to pay for a meal for a kid that is getting ready to sign a huge NHL contract, throw a huge hissy fit, and eventually he agrees to void it. The guy is still playing in the NHL and is having a pretty solid career. I should have just paid for the pizza and had him sign his dumb card. Story 48. Doesn't exactly literally conform to the question, but maybe it does in spirit. My first job was at a Subway, and certain people just couldn't ask me to make their dang sandwich. Oh no. They would ask what school I'd gone to become a sandwich artist and if I had my bachelor's in art. Thanks for abusing the dignity and grace of some kid making less per hour than the price of your damn pizza sub, you horrible hell sloth. Story 49. Here it goes. So this 40-year-old kind of heavy-set woman is seated at my table. The first thing I notice is she was alone and had a really thick novel with her. I approach her in a timely manner and ask her what she would like to drink. The first thing she tells me is that she is waiting for one more person, but she'll go ahead and order her cocktail now. I let her know the bar is kind of backed up, so it may be a little longer than normal for her drink. So her drink comes out and I bring it to her. The other person still hasn't arrived. She then asks me why her drink took so long. I apologized and said the bar was backed up with drink orders. I walk away and check up on my other tables, and about 2 minutes later come back to her table and ask her if everything is okay. She complains about the drink and wants to order something else from the bar. She tells me what she wants and then says, "Please, don't let it take as long as the last time." I calmly let her know again that the bar is unusually busy, but I'll get it to her as quickly as possible. The other person still hasn't arrived. I bring the drink out, and she got tired of waiting for the other person and placed her food order. Everything came out in a timely manner and correctly. Nothing to complain about. She then asks for the check, and I bring it to her. She pays with a credit card and left. I look at the credit card slip. She left $0 in tip, so I'm looking around the table for cash but couldn't find any. I did notice that she left her novel, so I go to a secluded area of the kitchen with novel in hand and proceed to tear out the final chapter of the book. I then walk to the host stand with a big-ass smile on my face as she's coming back to reclaim the novel. I hand it to her and tell her to have a nice evening. Story 50? Boy, this is my time to shine. Let's get some clarifications first. I work in a pretty busy restaurant. Fridays and Saturdays are living hell. On average, we have 250 guests for dinner on these days, which means packed till close. We have a system that every waiter has his own area. One of these is a lot bigger than the others though, so usually there's 2 waiters doing that area instead of 1. We were understaffed on a Saturday night, and my manager decided to put me in said area by myself, as the others couldn't handle it, which has happened before, and it's usually not a big deal. There's 2 round tables in this area, one with 6 and one with 4 seats. Both tables had families on them. As the evening goes on and the restaurant gets busier, so does my area. So my service slowed down a bit and the tables had to wait for their food longer. I apologized and explained at every table, and they understood and told me not to worry about it. Except for the father on the round table with 4 seats, whom had been drinking quite a bit already and was obviously buzzed. He started getting angrier every time I walked past. At a given point, when said table was waiting for dessert, apparently the father thought it would be a good idea to stand up and pour his full glass of beer all over me, as I was serving the food to the family at the round table next to them. At this point, I had no idea what just happened. I guess I went into a state of, what the heck is going on right now? So I didn't know how to respond. Luckily for me, one of the bartenders saw this happening and stormed towards the guy at the speed of lightning to kick him out, almost literally. The only positive thing that came from this was that all the other tables felt so bad for me. They didn't mind about ticket times at all anymore. Story 51. I accidentally spilt a small glass of water on a lady who was dining alone. The place was packed, and a customer had get sex into me making this happen. I apologized profusely, but she was absolutely vile. She was shouting at me so that the whole restaurant could hear. When she'd finished, I walked out into the kitchen and explained what I'd done to the manager and my coworker. They started laughing, and I started crying and told them how vile she'd been, and that I'd usually laugh too, but couldn't this time. I told my manager how vile she'd been, and with each word, I could see him getting angrier and angrier until he said, "Where is she?" We left the kitchen, and I pointed her out. He marched over to her. I don't know what he said, but it involved escorting her out whilst the customers who'd overheard her applauded. To my old manager, Matt, you were a legend of a boss. To the lady, that's why you dine alone. You are a horrible person. Story 52. I had a large party that took my entire section on the patio. It seemed like a family celebration, and after all the joiners arrived, they needed tables in another waitress's section as well. They ordered lots of food and drinks. They were loud. And they ended up staying for 7 hours, which meant they had a big bill, over $800, that took over the patio, and they were there for my whole shift. This is not necessarily bad because they were celebrating, and for me, they were fairly happy customers. However, as you may have guessed, they didn't tip me anything at all when they finally cleared out, and I cried. The whole time I cleaned up their huge mess because I had to tip out a percentage of their bill to the kitchen and bar, which meant I had worked my whole shift and was now going home with less than server's hourly wage, which is less than minimum wage. Many of my coworkers were kind and supportive and told me similar stories that had happened to them, but really it was less comforting and more painful to think about how frequently this happens. Abolish the tipping system. Story 53. In 7 years of experience, 1. Had a homeless guy washing his tennis balls in our restroom sink. 2. Had an escaped patient from a mental institution come in dropping numerous. 3. Served a guy that kept coming in a lot in a short time. Turns out he had hit a girl and dumped her the river out back. 4. Had someone come in one time screaming that a truck was on fire. 3 customer who it belonged to said, "That's why I have insurance," and calmly strolled outside at an oddly slow pace, while everyone and their mother moved their vehicle. 5. Guy told me our gumbo tastes like bleach, but ate most of it and wanted his money back. Told him he'd have better taste buds if he didn't hit them with bleach. 6. Had a guy send his plate back because his food was nice and hot, but his physical plate was cold, SVC bringing down the temperature of his food too much. 7. Had a guy throw his plate back onto my tray, effectively getting his food all over me because it wasn't hot enough. Owner of the place nuked it for 6 minutes and sent me back out with it. Old man couldn't touch it until everyone else at the table was done. Story 54. Man comes in alone, looked to be in his late 50s or early 60s, and snaps at me to get my attention. Before I can speak, he says, "Coke with a lemon wedge." We were a tiny little cafe without the funding for a machine or the attention for a sponsorship. So we didn't serve soda. I told him so, and he said, "I don't think you heard me. I want a Coke with a lemon wedge." I was pretty confused because I made it pretty clear we didn't have Coke. Turns out, he actually wanted me to walk next door, buy him a Coke, and then bring it in and serve it to him. I told him as politely as I could that this was absolutely not happening, and he picked up the china teacups we put at each place, setting and threw it on the ground, shattering it and cutting open my ankle just a bit. I didn't notice until way later. The whole cafe went very quiet, and I just kind of stood there looking at the mess of broken china. These were beautiful, rare cups that were all but impossible to replace, and I just didn't know what to do being an 18-year-old facing up against an aggressive older man. Fortunately, just literally a few seconds after the china hit the floor, a man got up from his table across the cafe and walked over. He then reached in his back pocket and showed the man his police badge, because he was an off-duty cop. China-throwing guy did not get his Coke with a lemon wedge or any food, but he did get arrested and a ticket for making threats and breaking public property. The fun part, I just wanted a damn Coke. If this little girl knew anything about service, I wouldn't have had to set her straight. I learned later he was the town loony who had actually done something like this on several other locations in town. I still have the scar from the piece of china that cut my ankle. Story 55. I used to have this couple come into the coffee shop I worked at in the early 90s AS before all restaurants in my state became tobacco-free. He was a man in his 50s and his wife was in her 70s and in a wheelchair. They were both always dirty and smelly and vulgar, and they only ever sat at a table and drank coffee and smoked cigarette after cigarette. The man was disgustingly filthy. He never bathed or changed his clothes or brushed his teeth, and his stink would make me want to vomit when he came to the register to pay his $2 coffee bill. The woman only ever wore a housecoat and slippers, and you could see the catheter coming from between her legs with a clear bag of urine hanging off the side of her wheelchair. The husband would often bring her in the cafe, set her up at the table with her coffee and cigarettes, and then leave her there for 2 or more hours. She would sit and cry, but then yell at anyone who tried to help her, so we left her alone and kept her coffee full, hoping that catheter bag held out. They almost never ate, but because they didn't really cause any trouble. And the restaurant wasn't busy most of the times that they came in, the manager didn't feel compelled to ever do anything about them. They stopped coming in the day after our state enacted no smoking laws in all restaurants, and we never saw them again. But later on, a terrible story came to light. The man was leaving his wife there for hours while he was off abuse, a girl that lived in the trailer park that he managed. When she got pregnant, he stole the park receipts, burned down the office, ran off with the girl, and they went on a crime spree that culminated with them hit 2 people in a horrific manner. They were both captured, and he is on death row, and she is spending her life in prison. Story 56. Asked a couple if they wanted dessert. Guy proceeded to stick his hand in between his wife. She was thighs and says, "No thanks, I got my dessert right here." At the time, I was horrified. But now having an office job, I wish I could have those strange interactions again instead of the typical office talk. Story 57. Every so often, this woman and her sister came into the pizza place I worked at. They always started off the phone call with how much they loved our food, how fantastic the service was, etc. But that we also never put enough garlic on the crust. And I'm talking like 5 minutes of buildup to just tell us she wants extra garlic. So I tell her, "Don't worry, we'll make sure to put extra garlic on the crust." They come in, get their food, and leave. No problem. Except 5 minutes later, they're back. She starts grilling me on how there was almost no garlic on the pizza. I take a look at it, and there is considerably more garlic than normal on that cheese disc. Not only did she get a free pizza, but she kept the one she complained about. This happened a few more times, each time with more and more garlic. I'd have thought she was going vampire hunting, but also wanted a snack. She got like 3 free pizzas total. However, I remembered the name that came up whenever they ordered. It was a pretty unique name, but let's just say Jay. So, a month later, I pick up the phone and see Jay on the caller ID. I take their order, we go through the garlic spiel, call ended. Both me and my manager were fed up with this chick at this point. The garlic bottle needed to be refilled, but it still had enough garlic for maybe 6 pizzas. My manager says, "Hey, watch this." Dumps the garlic on the entire pizza, not just the crust. It was an apocalypse of garlic. Lakes were forming on the cheese of the pizza, and the crust was stained a bright, sickening yellow-orange. It soaked through the box and stained the table underneath it. It was truly an unhealthy amount of garlic for anyone, and had I seen it without context, I would likely advise not eating it. Jay showed up, opened up the box, and seeming satisfied, paid for her order, and left. I was dumbfounded. I'm seriously concerned with her well-being. She hasn't been back since. Story 58. I was working behind a dessert bar. We had a homeless drunk lady that would come in to get drinks, but you have to have food, so she would get clam chowder. She would ask for it to be reheated every 10 minutes, but never touched it. The server started to ignore her requests to reheat the dish, so the lady took her bread and slammed it into the chowder, spraying it all over the customers and my area. Management kicked her out. A few minutes later, a customer came in and said, "Hey, some lady just took a crap in the doorway." Story 59. Horrible customer, but instant karma moment. I worked at a pizza sandwich place that bordered a big-time sports college, and this store was a food delivering machine post 5 p.m. for students and local residents. Half the store was ovens, and we workers buzzed around like bees, preparing the food, prepping the carry-out stuff, and handing off food at the counter. Customer lines backed up out the door too, but we handed off food like the New England Patriots run their offense. We had hundreds of people that were regulars, several of which were big college football players. We also had hotheads that abused the staff if they arrived early for pickup, or just outright lied about what they ordered and when, would yell, scream, etc. Just take someone else's sandwich. Just give it to me. We had a customer just like the above one night, and as I stepped forward to help one of the counter girls who was melting under an ahole's blistering attack, my eyes were twitching around to see what sandwich I might grab. And as I looked up again, someone pushed through the door, and it was filled with this soon-to-be NFL legend defensive tackle. I had severed him many times before, and we knew each other by sight. He glanced down toward a sandwich and nodded his head. I instantly knew what he wanted. So I handed this asswipe a sandwich, and just as he smirked, soon-to-be NFL legend yells, "That's my sandwich." This asshole turns around and freezes up, mouth agape. NFL guy is famous for dislocating people's shoulders, headshots, knocking people out of the game with one shot, etc., and also speaks once more. "You messing up here? Get!" I asswipe drops sandwich on counter and pushes out the door in a heartbeat. There were numerous thanks from the staff, and nobody back in the line saw what happened. NFL guy would never accept free food. Waited his turn always, and was a peach of guy, but had a stare and glint to his eyes that would melt steel. This place was a sweatshop of sorts, but the food was great. Story 60. I used to work at a fast food restaurant, usually working the front register at nights. The town I live in isn't all that creepy, but it is full of drunks and meth heads and just generally really angry people. So this guy rushes in. He seems very worked up about something, and immediately, as he gets to the counter, looks me in the eye and says, "Whatever you do not let my mother pay for the food." I was a little taken aback at his intensity, but I nodded, just as the aforementioned mother enters behind him. The pair order their food, seeming generally pleased about their managing to have a low total, even though the food is really overpriced. Then simultaneously, the man thrusts forward a bag of change and his mom a debit card, and I freeze. Because I'm awkward like that, the man gives me a look as his mother insists to me, "Oh, sweetie, let me pay. He really needs that money for something else. Take my card, let me pay." So naturally, knowing how it is when you need money for something and try to spend it on something and regret it, I begin to reach for her card. "Come on, Ma," the man says. "I told the poor girl to let me pay. She's going to let me pay, and you're going to let me pay." He then looks at me. "Right?" he insists. In a moment of panic and confusion and glancing around at other employees silently asking what I should do, I opted to take the woman's card. Mistake. The man was instantly outraged, screaming profanities at both me and his own mother, and then proceeded to pick the dessert display tray off the counter and launched it, full force, at the front counter. I freaked the duck out. He left, and his poor mother was left alone near tears in front of me. We gave her the food for free, and I never saw either of them again. This is why I'm not in food service anymore. Story 61. Okay, this is a crazy story all around. I used to work at Cracker Barrel, and one day our managers decided to run a server contest. They would do this all the time, and normally it was with something like carrot cake, for example. This time, the manager wanted us to see who could sell the most Arnold Palmers, half iced tea, half lemonade. Now, don't get me wrong, Arnold Palmers are delicious and everything, but there's something insanely awkward about asking a person, "Can I start you off with something to drink? How about a nice refreshing Arnold Palmer?" Nevertheless, I wanted the free meal that was the contest prize, so I asked every table I had that day. Most tables gave me a weird look. Many of them asked me what it was, and a couple actually ordered one. There was one guy with his family, however, who asked me what an Arnold Palmer was, and I told him, this is important, half lemonade, half iced tea. So he orders one for himself, and his kid says he wants one too. Sweet. 2 Arnies, coming right up. Fast forward to the end of the meal, and the guy calls me over and tells me, "Where's the whiskey? You didn't put any in my drink." I said, We don't serve alcohol at Cracker Barrel, and there's no alcohol in a traditional Arnold Palmer. You told me there was whiskey in one. Why else would I have ordered it? I responded that no. I didn't say there was whiskey as it doesn't come with whiskey, and we don't serve alcohol at Cracker Barrel. He keeps arguing with me, and eventually I say, "Sir, you knew there was no whiskey because you ordered one for your child," thinking this bit of logic would help him come to his senses. At this, he stands up and yells at me, "Don't tell me how to raise my child!" Flips his empty plate onto the ground in protest and tells his family, "We're leaving!" And they walked out on the check after they had pretty much ate everything on the table. Needless to say, it was a very confusing shift. Story 62. I had a guy come in and he was smoking. I politely asked him to put it out and he flipped on me. He said he was going to come back that night and kick my ass. Security escorted us to our cars that night. Story 63. It was never the people who made a scene. Don't let that encourage you to make a scene. I still lost lots of respect for those people. It also wasn't the absolute filth who would obviously lie about the service to fleece gift cards and compensation so often that other servers would warn you when they were seated, or even the people who would abuse the unlimited X concept and stuff food in their handbags and request more. I waited tables for 3 years, and this happened once. They appeared to be enjoying themselves. From a personal measure, I was nailing my job with promptness and politeness. Kids' milk and food went out first, etc. My inquiries into such were met with pleasure and thankfulness. Halfway through the meal, when had, I left the table, she went and sought out a manager to complain, specifically about me. She requested I was fired. Her reasons were inconsequential lies. She used her own experience in the food industry as her support. There probably would have been severe consequences for me that evening if the cool manager wasn't working. She was comped. She stiffed me. It is years later, and this incident still upsets me. It was like their mission that night was to go out and get a waiter fired. Story 64. When I was 16 years old, I had an after-school job at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was working the counter one evening and we were packed. Guy gets up to the register, orders food, then hands me a check. We accepted checks. This was like 27 years ago. And usually people would just fill it out for the total. I rang up the total and put it in the register and closed it without looking at the check because this was a fairly common occurrence. The guy says, "Whoa, honey, I've got some change coming to me." I was very confused and asked him what he meant. He started screaming at me in front of everybody that he had given me a damn traveler's check for $100 and that he had damn money coming to him. I calmly explained that I hadn't realized he had given me a traveler's check, that we did not accept traveler's checks, and that I would need to get the manager to open the register so that I could return it to him. I was 16 years old in a small Texas town and I had never seen one, so the situation was just naturally confusing for me. I was young. This guy looks me dead in the eye and says, "You are so stupid." I may be a lot of things, but stupid isn't one of them. I looked him dead in the eye and told him very loudly to go and duck himself, while everyone, including my manager, looked on in silence. I never heard a word about it or even got scolded. People generally don't mess with me. Story 65. First day, our bar opened. We were slammed. We were using a POS system, which was brand new. Only 2 other places uses it, and it was crap. The kitchen staff didn't know how to handle the rush. I was the assistant manager, so I was handling all the servers' problems while running a 24-seat bar, getting drinks for the servers' tables. One giant meathead Marine, man, I know I ducked up, but damn. He ordered wings. I had to keep asking him to repeat the order because the POS was terrible, and employees kept asking me questions, ruining my train of thought. He wanted a different channel put on the TV in front of him. There were 42 TVs in the store, no master controller, so I would have to dig to find the correct remote, while damn slammed. He wanted extra sauce. I forgot trying to get his stupid damn channel change while running the bar. He gets up and yells so loud that the restaurant goes silent. This is the worst damn experience I've ever had at a restaurant. You guys are damn awful. Even though I reiterated multiple times that this is our first day open and there will be bumpy and that we ask you be patient. I quit that night. Now I work at a brewery with 8,000x less stress and much better hours. Story 66. A table with 15 kids and 5 adults wanted their food in 45 minutes. Didn't order fast enough, tried to get me in trouble, and stole my tip. I was working at Chili's a few years back, and a table of 2 adults and 7 kids in soccer uniforms come in. The woman tells me that they are in a hurry because their movie starts in 45 minutes. Oh, and also there's 3 more adults and 8 more kids on their way. I say it could be tight, but if you get all the orders ready, we can cook the food on the fly and get it out ASAP. I took all the kids' drink orders because they weren't ready with their food orders yet. I got the 9 drinks ready and returned to the table to find the 3 additional adults and 8 more kids. But all the kids decided to switch seats with each other. So I had to get it all sorted out and take the new kids' drink orders, the old kids' food orders, and the new kids didn't even have their food orders ready, and didn't until another 10 minutes. When I finally get the new kids' food orders, it's already been 20 minutes, and the first adult starts yelling at me that I'm not fast enough. She says that I need to get all the food to go. One of the ladies that came with the second batch left earlier than the rest of them and left me $10 on the table. Once I finally got all the food out after 30 minutes, the first lady asked to speak to my manager. Told my manager I was the worst waiter she's ever had, didn't leave a tip, and took the $10 the other lady had left for me. My manager had seen the entire thing, though, and gave me $20 from the store because I couldn't take any other tables the entire time, and she was awesome. Story 67. All right, this is tame compared to most of the stuff on here, but I run a restaurant. My server comes up to me one day because a customer on a table wants to talk to me. I walk over and she's complaining that her tea is cold and doesn't want to pay for it. But I see that she had made the tea and added milk to it, but looks like hasn't been touched. So I tell her that I can bring over another tea bag and another teapot with hot water, and she says that she just wants it taken off her bill. Seeing that she already went through the steps of making it, I try to inquire a bit more on how it got cold. She explains to me that she likes to enjoy her tea after her meal, not during. So she went through the trouble of making it but not drinking it, and now that her meal is done, it got cold. I politely explained to her that if she had let her server know that she liked it afterward, she would have been more than happy to accommodate her request, but since she didn't, there's really not much I can do. And then I explained to her that I cannot and will not take it off her check, and I totally could have. I take much bigger items off checks all the time for whatever reason. It was served cold, didn't taste good, object found. But this was just so astounding and petty to me that I decided to be petty and make her pay for the damn tea. Story 68. I worked at Friendly's when I was 16, first serving job. One day, I'm sat a 10 top, 2 of which were counselors. The rest were special needs, adults. As soon as I introduce myself at the 2 table, one of the counselors cuts me off and says, "They all want Cokes. Bring them an extra cup with ice so we can pour in a little at a time." No problem. Come out with 8 Cokes and 8 glasses of ice. One of the clients gets excited and grabs my arm, causing me to spill the drinks on the floor. All of the clients at the table start laughing, and the counselor tells me I need to be more careful. After I clean everything up, I get the food order. Lots of dietary restrictions. As I start running the food out, the same client goes for my arm again. I'm able to avoid his grasp, but the counselor hisses, "Watch yourself," like I had done something wrong. The table eats and gets ready to leave. The counselor leaves me a 72-cent tip on an 80 bill. On the way out the door, she grabs my arm and says, "Someone pissed the seat. Wear gloves when you clean it up." I worked at several restaurants since then, over the last 10 years, but this is still my worst experience. Story 69. I work at a very expensive fine dining restaurant in San Francisco. I was a new employee at the time of this story and was brining a guest their dinner with a few other employees. We do a synchronized service, and we're dropping food for a party of 10, so there are waiters in suits all around the table. I was behind a gentleman and even said, "Pardon me, sir," as preparing to place his steak on the table, and he, while talking, suddenly violently scooted his chair back into me, causing a small amount of sauce to spill on his sleeve. He began to berate me and curse at me, calling me an idiot, and much worse. He went on, causing tables near his group to look up at the commotion. He called me a git, a waste of space, and told me he hoped I got fired and couldn't find another job. Shaken, I reported to my GM what had happened. He immediately went to the table and very smoothly and politely took the offending guest aside, after carefully explaining to the guest that he was the one who caused the incident. My manager further explained that if he even looked wrong at me again, that they would have to step outside to have a different conversation. My manager was tall and in shape and basically told this guest if he ducked with the staff, he would get his ass beat. In an industry where we professionally take people's crap, having management that gets your back when people are cruel is satisfying beyond belief. Story 70. 6 years in the service, one story will always stick with me. Scene: not so fancy Asian bistro. Reservation notes: 15 people, birthday party. Auntie wants to show up 30 minutes early to decorate. Odd, but we're thinking maybe some table toppers and a banner. She's the first to show up half an hour after the reservation. Mind you, the party takes up my entire section, so thankfully, was called to come in an hour later than scheduled so that I wasn't standing around with no tables. She brings banners, balloons, confetti, enough cupcakes for the entire restaurant, noisemakers, and her own damn Jell-O shots. Completely tacky, even for this chain. Then the party doubled in size, with no space as we're busy, and she didn't make a proper reservation. Since they come randomly and change seats, it's hard to keep track of who's who or have any pace to the meal. We pull out tables from storage, hose them off. She's still idiot. Other guests are complaining they are too loud. In the end, it was a 4-hour experience. 32 guests, about $50 worth of food unclaimed, glitter and frosting smashed into the carpet for weeks, and with almost a $400 grand total. I did not make $40 off this trashy party. And of course, they weren't polite or patient. At one point, she mocked me for politely telling her that I would do X after I did the other 4 things that were just shouted at me. And that's the first night I ever took shots with my boss after hours. Story 71. When I was in high school, I worked at a Johnny Rockets. It was maybe my second day waitressing, and a guy with his family ordered a plain burger. Put the order in, but put it in slightly incorrectly. So it came out with none of the toppings, but it did have Thousand Island dressing. Honest new kid mistake. The guy was totally pissed. Made such an angry face that I can still recall it 13 years later. And then, out of nowhere, smeared the burger all over my chest and walked out. Story 72. Not the worst, but the stupidity of it sticks with me. I work at an ice cream parlor with a moving carousel. The carousel seats 20, and the rest of the restaurant has seating with booths and tables. Customers usually seat themselves. We don't take reservations for the carousel because it's in high demand, but people can have a birthday party, and the cost of that gets them the marquee and the carousel for 1 hour. I was walking around refilling water during one of these parties. We were also packed, and there's a middle-aged man pouting that him and his family couldn't get the carousel. I explained that there was a birthday party, and he replied with, "Well, it's my birthday too." His family was enjoying themselves though, so whatever. Another one is a lady who was having a party and took one of the tables on the floor for presents and whatnot. The rest if the tables and booths are in a section that require going up a few stairs. Party lady only had maybe 2 carousel tables full. An older lady with a walker comes in and requests the smaller table on the floor for obvious reasons. I tell party lady and she blatantly refuses because we're having a party. She was rude about it even though this lady needed a floor table. I've never felt so bad in my life. Story 73. I worked at Waffle House while in college, and I started out working a lot of third shift, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., to bring in some extra cash during the summer. So you can imagine the things I saw. I was working one Tuesday or Wednesday night, and it was an empty house at 3 a.m. Not a customer in sight until this couple walks in and orders some food. Nothing out of the ordinary until we heard the sound of a plate hitting the ground, and we see the woman run out of the restaurant to her car. The man she was with proceeded to chase her out and started hitting her in the parking lot. Now there are 3 guys, including me, working that want to go out and beat the crap out of this man, but all we can do is call the police, or we can lose our job for intervening. I called the cops and 5 cars showed up to get this man, who didn't act sorry at all for what he did. It turns out they had gotten married the day before, and Waffle House seemed like an ideal honeymoon location. After getting beaten up in our parking lot, the woman didn't press charges on her new husband and paid for their meal with a tip. Safe to say they were off to a great start as a couple. Story 74. Not a waiter, but a host. I was standing up front one day, and a young kid came up to my stand and told me there was someone on the floor in the bathroom. I didn't think much of it with how young the kid was, but I checked it out anyway. When I get in there, a guy is passed out in the handicap stall. I tried to wake him, called to him, and tried shaking him in an attempt to wake him up. Didn't work. I ran out and found my manager. Told him there was a guy passed out in the men's stall. Without a word, we both run back to the bathroom. My manager climbs under the stall door and opens it. He's trying to wake him. And I noticed that on the baby changing station is a coat, the spoon from his table, and a needle. Needless to say that once he woke up, he was immediately kicked out and told to never return. Story 75. I waited tables at a little mom-and-pop type family diner years ago. Waitresses would bring menus and water over to the tables as people sat themselves. One day during a busy rush, I had 2 tables come in simultaneously and sit right next to each other. I brought menus over to both and took drink orders. Table first was a man alone who declined a drink and informed me he was waiting for his wife. Table second was a foursome who ordered drinks right away. When I brought table second's drinks over, they ordered their meals right away. As I brought out table second's starters a few minutes later, I saw first's wife arriving. As the tables right next to each other, I was able to greet her and check if I could get her a drink immediately. Her husband flipped, stood up shouting about how he was here first and I shouldn't have served the other table before him. In the midst of his scream fest, he took a swing at my face. I felt the air brush past me, but somehow he didn't quite connect and my boss and other patrons tossed him out. From start to finish this, all took place in perhaps 15 minutes and resulted in all my other tables tipping beyond excessively. So not all bad. Story 76. I worked at Denny's for about 6 years. One night on a third shift on a Friday night, I was the only cook. There was my manager, 1 dishwasher, and a couple of servers, one of which is my fiance now. Anyway, so we're getting slammed. It was like 2 in the morning. I had been there for 12 hours with no end in sight. I was running slow and was super pissy about being the only cook running the kitchen. Well, this super drunk guy comes in and orders chicken wraps, and it takes me quite a while to get to them because I was so awfully behind. I finally send them out. They were supposed to have no lettuce. They get sent back. I keep cooking and kind of forget about them. I hurried up and remade them, but forgot to not put on lettuce. My girlfriend takes them out. He then proceeds to yell, "I said no damn lettuce," then throws the bowl directly at my girlfriend, barely misses her. Our 6 feet, 300 pounds dishwasher then proceeds to get all in his face. He picks him up, throws him out. We called the cops and dude got arrested, while me and my manager run out off the kitchen to make sure my girlfriend was fine. Story 77. I worked in a Brazilian steakhouse for about a year in college. One evening, a table asks to see the manager. I have my manager come over to the table, and the woman sitting at the table begins to berate him with complaints of poor service. No attention from the gauchos, etc., etc. He waits for her to finish complaining and in the friendliest, most cordial way responds with, "Well, that is simply unacceptable. Take a look over there. See that? That's one of our security cameras. I can see the entire dining room. I'm going to take just a few minutes and look at the tape of tonight's service and personally fire whoever I think is responsible for ignoring your table. Is there anything I can get you to drink while you wait?" He knew she was trying to take him for a ride for free dinner, drinks. She immediately tried to couch her former complaints in, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that," and "That's really not necessary," but he kept it up. "No, no, no," he replied. "I expect dinner service to be perfect. Trust me, I'll find the problem personally and remove them before the shift is over." The look on her face was priceless. Best restaurant manager I ever worked for. Story 78. I once was grating cheese on top a blind person's pasta and told her to say, "When." The looks I received from the other people at the table will haunt me for the rest of my life. Story 79. I was doing a routine check on a table that had been sitting for nearly 2 hours during the dinner rush. I noticed that they had finally finished their food, so I asked calmly, but very clearly and directly if they were done, and would like me to clear their plates. They both completely ignored me. Mind you, I'm about 10 inches from their faces. Seeing as there was literally nothing left on either plate, I reached down and began clearing them, assuming that their total lack of an answer and equal lacking of food was consent. The dude slapped my hand like Donkey Kong using a smash move. He said with a very raised voice, "I'm not done yet." It took every fiber of my being to not slap him back in the face. Story 80. During college, I worked at a crafty small-town restaurant in Texas. You know, one of those chicken-fried steak-type places. It was Halloween night, and when all my friends were all out partying, I had the latest shift in the restaurant all to myself. It was totally dead that night, and I had very few tables. Just before I was about to close up, a really trashy family of 8 people came in. One guy dressed as Fred Flintstone covered his well-done steak in ketchup and soy sauce. A detail I'll never forget. They were rude, demanding, and worst of all, incredibly loud for no reason whatsoever. After I tolerated these absolute slobs for a couple of hours, they finally left. And what did I find for my tip? A soiled diaper and a handful of small change on the table. Story 81. On Christmas, a customer wouldn't accept that her 3-minute-long order, which took a sheet and a half, wouldn't arrive before the drinks and appetizers. Not more than 10 minutes went by, and any time In came near that table, she would grab my apron, demanding to speak to a manager, or call me incompetent. Her poor family was so embarrassed. And when her food arrived, she started pointing out all the things wrong with it. And as I pulled out the page and half ticket, this woman ordered for a damn surf and turf, explained everything on the plate. She lost her mind, screamed at me to get the manager again, while pounding on the table, then slapping her plate off the table. Her husband had to restrain her and drag her out of the restaurant, kicking and screaming. She had to be on substances. Story 82. I work for a bowling alley in my local town, and I work the counter, fryer, grill, everything for a snack bar. I even bust the food to bowlers and people at the bar. My worst experience so far with a customer is that a man, around his 40 or so, was furious that we didn't have any more of our clam chowder at 9 p.m. on a Friday night. We make it at 8 a.m., and it usually sells out by 3 p.m., and we make sure to tell late comers to be here earlier next time. With that, he ordered cheese fries instead. I happily made them for him and ask him if he needs anything for them. I get a very nice answer of, "Nah, the cheese fries are enough." When I gave him his fries and proceed to go to the back to turn off the grill, he throws the whole large order of cheese fries at my back. He then yelled, "Take down the sign if you aren't selling something a whole," and ran out of the establishment. I'm only 2 months into this work, and I'm hoping it only gets better. Story 83. Back when I was a host, I told a man that the wait was 45 minutes. He called me an idiot and told me he was going elsewhere. Good luck finding a place that's not on a wait at 6 p.m. on a Friday, idiot. Story 84. I used to work at Red Lobster. Had a kid, around 8 or 10 years old, come in for a celebratory meal with his family. Dad said he could get whatever he wanted, so naturally the kid orders enough snow crab legs for 17 people. He proceeds to eat everything. Dad is very proud. Then a few minutes later, he starts vomiting all over the table. He managed to aim it into a bowl after the first few seconds, and then proceeded to hand the puke-filled bowl to me and asked for a new one. Story 85. It was one of my first days working in a full-service restaurant. I had never really served wine before and had received minimal training. I had a table that ordered a bottle of wine, and I opened the bottle and served it. I had forgotten to give a taste to the gentleman who opened the bottle, instead just pouring a glass for each guest. The next day, the man came into the restaurant, told his server to make me come over. He asked for my manager and made her sit at the table with him. He then ordered a bottle of wine, made me go through the steps of service, and berated me about how I had embarrassed him in front of his friend. We were in front of my manager and other customers, and I left the table crying after about 20 minutes of belittlement. He told me he wanted me to feel embarrassed in front of my friends, as I had done to him. Damn that guy. He sent me flowers a couple of weeks later because my manager called him and told him he was a banana. Story 86. I once had a really rude woman demand to book a reservation for Christmas Day. We were only a small family-run restaurant, so we weren't going to open on Christmas Day. She promptly turned and shouted, "What do you expect me to do? Cook it myself," and storm out slamming a door and in the process smashing a potted plant. Other time, a woman, who was quite obviously obese, called me too fat to be a waitress because I couldn't squeeze past her. I quit being a waitress when I realized I hate people. Story 87. I work at an Italian family restaurant that is locally owned and basically a staple of the area. My very first day on the floor without a trainer was a Mother's Day. Yes, in hindsight, that was pretty foolish of the owner. A lady ordered gnocchi and I wrote down her order. I get over to the micros and can't find gnocchi anywhere, and for good reason. Turns out we don't serve gnocchi. I go back over to the table to let the lady know we don't sell that here, and she starts screaming at me that I ruined her Mother's Day. The entire day was ruined. Because I didn't know we don't serve gnocchi. I can understand being a little irritated at me. I really should have known that. But damn lady, look at the damn menu next time. And oh yeah, superb example you are setting for your kids. Idiot. Story 88. Waiter at an Aladdin's eatery. For those of you that don't know, it's not exactly a place you get drunk. Some girl came in around 12 p.m. for lunch, was showing signs of being tipsy, and headed for the bathroom. She wiped out and pissed herself in the back hallway outside of the bathroom. During all of this, I was at her table with her mom ordering wine for the two of them. Manager came over and informed us of the situation. Mom had to weekend at Bernie's her daughter out of the place in front of the entire restaurant. Story 89. I work at a certain pancake place. One day, we're busy as hell with like 2 servers, and 2 men come in perfectly normal and nice. One of them orders a French toast and the food. Drinks come out no problem. Because we were so busy, we had no silverware re-rolled. So I asked them to give me about 30 seconds to roll some for them. They agree to it, and I go roll. As I was leaving, he asks the other server for a fork, and she says that I went over there to get him one. He gets up and throws his plate onto the counter and says, "You guys can eat this crap. I don't want to eat food from here." The guy with him ended up staying and finishing his meal while he sat there angrily. Story 90. When I was 15, I worked cash in hand at a restaurant, illegal for them otherwise. There was a rowdy group of 3 men coming in for all-day breakfast around 3 p.m. They were catcalling me, brushing hands against my arm to get my attention, that sort of thing. The uniform involved a skirt around knee length with an apron over it. The largest of the 3 got annoyed because I didn't come to their table anymore, was sick of the catcalling, and out his hand under my skirt and grabbed my ass. Just grabbed it. The owner didn't give a duck, and the waitresses shrugged as if this was completely normal. I got a friend to hand my uniform back in and just cried. It didn't hurt or anything, but I felt embarrassed and upset and kind of dirty. I don't know. Those guys really made me feel like crap. Story 91. I had a couple order 2 bowls of mussels, take each mussel out of its shell, and then cut them up before eating them. When they saw the black stomach of the mussel, among other gross-looking inside bits, they started yelling that I, the cooks, as well as the restaurant, were trying to poison people. They would not believe that mussels really do look as awful and horrifying as they honestly do, and under no circumstances should be cut up or analyzed too closely. I ushered them out as quickly as I could. No bill. Please stop accusing me of attempted murder. It's making everyone here uncomfortable. Story 92. I was 7 months pregnant and working at McDonald's. Some customers ask for orders to be brought to their table. This is fine. Some people are slightly disabled or have big orders and would rather watch their kids than wait for their food. So I was carrying this big tray of food, and that, plus my belly, meant I couldn't see my feet. Turns out there was a small stool in the middle of the floor that I didn't see. Manager checked CCTV, and it was some kid who moved it no big deal. Partially landed on my belly. As I slowly got up in shock, and as my colleagues ran to make sure I was okay, this lady stands over me and berates me for dropping her lunch, and insisting I personally pay for a replacement. Story 93. The worst customers at the place I work are the college students. I'm sure they're really nice people, but we have a really small restaurant. They come in herds of 15, and together they are a waitress's nightmare. The worst ones I've ever had to deal with was a group of 8 that came in 45 minutes before closing. Doesn't sound bad until more people slowly trickle in over the next half hour. They all order different things. If you work short order, it makes you want to cry. Don't tip. Stay 45 minutes past closing. Don't clean their tables or put them back where they came from and are loudly talking about how they just threw up in the bathroom and got incredibly high last night with a family with a 4-year-old next to them. Sometimes the worst things are just the small things compounded. Story 94. I have a pretty good story here. Last Christmas, I was serving an older man who came in during a rush. I served him like any other normal customer. The cooks had messed up his order and I mistakenly hadn't noticed. The dude was damn pissed. He cussed me out in front of multiple other people, cussed me out to my manager, filed a complaint. That was the beginning. The idiot found my Facebook and messaged my parents saying how much of a mistake I was. Like what? The only good thing that came from it was another customer saw how terrible he was to me and left me $20. Another day in the life of an 18-year-old Frisch's server. Story 95. A guy made a reservation saying he was going to propose. He asked for a special table and for dessert to come with a sparkler candle and, "Will you marry me?" written on it. I bring out the cake. The manager follows me with 2 glasses of champagne. My coworkers are cheering. We set everything down and walk away. They end up having a serious, quiet discussion, and it is very obvious that she is rejecting the proposal. Then 3 of their friends show up and sit at the table, all excited thinking their friends just got engaged. But it quickly became apparent to them that it was not the case. It's very quiet and awkward at the table. The woman who was being proposed to left, and the reject and his friends got wasted. He gave me a 20 precinct tip too, which was nice considering how crafty his night had been. Story 96. I worked as a waiter for a couple of months in a fairly posh restaurant attached to a hotel. Because of this, lots of business people would stay in the hotel and then eat in the restaurant every night. I remember for one straight week, there was a group of businessmen who would literally think they owned the place. I was bringing a steak over and there was little spaces between the table, one of the guys on another table. The posh ones was in the way. I said, "Excuse me, sir?" He just looked at me and splackmaned. I literally couldn't get through. So I asked again and just moved his chair out further, for no damn reason. From that point on, I immediately judged every damn person walking in there. And the bad thing is, most of them were like that. Posh restaurant problems. Story 97. I had an older and likely quite senile gentleman hurl his Salisbury steak at my head for not bringing his soup before his meal. He didn't order soup. Story 98. I was 8-ish months pregnant and working in my bar. Dude gets up to go to the bathroom and falls into multiple tables on the way back. I notified his group that they were all cool to hang out a while. But I couldn't serve that friend any more booze. They were totally nice about it and settled up their tabs as they were heading out soon anyways. Guy comes back and orders a beer. I tell him no, that he's had too much and should have a few waters. Didn't like that. Threw his beer mug at me, yelling about how pregnant chicks shouldn't work in bars and stumble runs out. I was pretty livid. I only worked day shifts for the next month. Story 99. I was waiting tables one time and had a table of about 10 people. We were in a small town in Texas, so our busiest time was right after church got out. They stayed for about an hour, and everything was great the entire time they were there. Then they all paid, and pretty much everyone laid down tips, but I couldn't clean the table, pick up tips until everyone had left. This one woman stayed behind until everyone was gone, then proceeded to pick up all the tips and pay for her food. I was about to say something when my manager told me to leave it alone and not say anything to the customer. He followed her and asked her not to come back again, but I never got those tips. Story 100. I had a waitress spill a tray of drinks on me once. That poor girl's face expressed the pinnacle of horror. Luckily, I only ordered water, so there was no harm, just a little inconvenience. She bought me a dessert and said, "Since drinks were on you, dessert is on me." I left a generous tip. I wouldn't get yelled at for making a mistake, so I feel like I should offer the same kind of professional courtesy to anyone else doing their job. Story 101. A skinny, somewhat pretty 18-year-oldish comes in and seats herself. She then proceeded to order about 4 entrees. She ate all 4 entrees. She went to the bathroom and purged. She came back out and ordered 4 more entrees. She kept asking for anything with cheese. She continually would get up every 15 minutes or so and go to the bathroom to throw up. She did not use utensils. She could not pay for her $300 bill. The cops knew who she was, as she does this frequently enough. Her father was a rich banana who came and paid her bill. I would rather deal with a pissed-off customer than the sadness that girl caused me that day.